Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror sci-fi movie called eXistenZ. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie is set in a distant future where biological VR game consoles have replaced traditional electronics. These gaming pods are made of flesh and blood and are connected to players via umbilical cords that plug into ports on their backs. This allows the game to interact directly with the player's spines. Two gaming companies called Antenna Research and Cortical Systematics are dominant in the market, fiercely competing with one another. Apparently, VR has grown so popular that a group of freedom fighters known as the Realist is fighting to keep virtual worlds from blending into reality and taking over players' minds. In the next scene, we witness the launch event for Antenna's new game called eXistenZ. The host then introduces the game's developer, Allegra Geller, who has created many successful games in the past. She enters the stage nervously and describes how revolutionary eXistenZ is and promises them an immersive experience. The host then announces that 12 players will be chosen for beta testing to give feedback on the game's pros and cons. Meanwhile, at the door, a man arrives to attend the event, but is stopped by an employee named Ted. He demands that his belongings be checked to see if there are any weapons. The man has brought his own gaming pod, but Ted informs him that it's unnecessary because pods will be provided at the event. Regardless, he doesn't think much of it and lets the man inside. Shortly after, the 12 selected players take their seats to begin the game. Alongside Allegra, they place the game pods on their laps, which look like lumps of animal tissue. Allegra then urges the players not to panic, reminding them that, although it may feel like reality, it is only a game. At this point, the man who Ted had previously stopped pulls out an unusual gun hidden in his pod. He then shouts, "Death to the demoness, Allegra Geller," and shoots her, causing her to collapse. He also shoots the program host, but before he can inflict further damage, the bodyguards manage to take him down. In the aftermath of this incident, Ted approaches the host, who is severely injured and on the verge of death. He urges Ted to take care of Allegra and protect her at all costs, as she is critical to their company. He also reveals that the killer was a member of the Realist group, and more of them are likely to come after her. Ted is distraught by the sudden turn of events, so he agrees without hesitation. He then takes an injured Allegra out of the commotion and drives her away from the scene. On the way, Allegra examines her shoulder wound and discovers it is not as serious as she had feared. She then asks Ted if he is a security guard, but to her shock, he reveals that he is only a marketing trainee. This annoys her, and she wonders how a marketing guy can protect her. Just then, his peculiar pink phone rings, and he tries to answer it. However, Allegra snatches the phone and throws it away, claiming that that wasn't a phone, it was a dildo, and that the Realists could use it to track them down. They then pull over on the side of the road where Ted helps her in removing the bullet. Shockingly, the bullet turns out to be a creature's tooth, and the criminal's gun was also made of a creature's bone. Later, the two arrive at a motel, where Allegra reveals to Ted that her pod contains the world's only copy of eXistenZ. She worries that it was damaged in the attack and decides to check by logging in, but she needs someone else to play with, so she asks Ted for his help. Unfortunately, he admits that he has never played any game in his life. Ted explains that he doesn't like to get pierced, which is required to install the bioport. Allegra requests that he install it because if the game is lost, her 5 years of effort will be in vain. Ted is initially hesitant, but after some convincing, he finally agrees. Since it is getting late, they have no choice but to use illegal methods to install the port. The two of them head to the gas station where they meet the owner, Gas. Ted then asks for his help in installing the port on him, but the man initially pretends he has no idea what it is. However, when he sees Allegra, his attitude suddenly shifts, and he kisses her feet. He then expresses gratitude to her for changing his life, and likely his name, for there's no way his parents called him Gas, and agrees to help them. Following this, Gas takes Ted inside and prepares to install the port. Our hero becomes terrified when he learns that Gas has only done this twice before, and refuses to cooperate. However, Allegra persuades him to take the risk for her sake, so he reluctantly agrees. Gas then drugs Ted to keep him from feeling the pain, and the procedure is completed quickly, but Ted becomes temporarily paralyzed below his legs and is informed that he will only be able to move once the drugs wear off. Next, Allegra decides to play the game with Ted and inserts the umbilical cord into his back, but seconds later, her pod shorts out and malfunctions malfunctions. This enrages Allegra, and she blames Ted, believing it was due to his nervousness. He insists that he wasn't, and the two start arguing like kids. Just then, Gas arrives with a shotgun and admits that he purposefully installed a faulty port in Ted. He then reveals that Allegra has a $5 million bounty on her head and that he intends to kill her. She begs him not to hurt her, but he points his gun at her and proceeds to pull the trigger. However, before he can do so, Ted grabs a puncturing tool from nearby and attacks Gas, killing him on the spot. Following the incident, the two run away and arrive at an isolated cabin in the middle of the forest. Allegra then meets an old man named Vincoeur, who turns out to be a former mentor of hers. She explains the situation to him, including how everyone is after her, and Vincoeur kindly agrees to let her stay. Following that, he and his assistant use a scalpel to perform surgery on the malfunctioning pod. It turns out that these game pods are created by culturing fertilized amphibian eggs, so the repair process is similar to dissecting an animal. After successfully fixing the pod, Vincoeur also replaces Ted's bioport with another one. Afterward, Allegra and Ted go to a room and decide to play the eXistenZ. As they plug the cord, they suddenly find themselves standing in a store inside the game. Ted is astounded by how realistic the game feels, claiming that it is indistinguishable from reality. He then asks Allegra what the game's goal is, but she says he has to play more to find out. After exploring the shop for a while, they meet the clerk Nader and inquire about the next steps in the game. Nader then leads them to a shed and hands them some micropods designed by Cortical Systematics. It turns out that these will provide them with new identities in the game. After Nader departs, the two insert the micropods into their ports. They then suddenly become aroused and begin making out. Ted is confused by this, so Allegra states that their characters may be intended to be intimate in the game. Kotaku is going to have a field day when they review this one. Moments later, the micropod activates and transports them to a deeper level of virtual reality. Ted finds himself in a game pod factory run by Cortical Systematics, where he is disemboweling frogs and wrapping their organs in paper. Shortly after, a worker named Nourish approaches him and informs him of his next task. He informs Ted to go to a Chinese restaurant in the forest and order their special. He also insists that Ted should not accept no as an answer. The latter naively agrees and then approaches Allegra, who is working in the distance. The two then proceed to the restaurant, where they are greeted by a Chinese waiter who asks what they want to order. Ted responds that he would like to order the special, but the waiter explains that they are only for special occasions. Ted insists that today is a special occasion because it is Allegra's birthday. Hearing this, the waiter agrees to bring the special, but the other employees appear scared and quickly leave the table. Shortly after, the waiter brings a massive dish to their table. To their surprise, the dish is filled with live mutant reptiles and amphibians. Ted is disgusted, but for some reason he can't stop himself from eating the food. After finishing the dish, he gathers the bones and surprisingly creates a strange gun out of them. This is similar to the one used by the Realist in the opening scene. Just then, an unexpected tooth falls out of his mouth and he uses it as ammo for the gruesome gun. Ted says that he now feels an urge to kill someone and aims the gun at Allegra's head. This causes her to freak out, but he quickly dismisses it as a joke. He then reveals that he has an impulse to kill the waiter, and Allegra urges him to act on that one. Ted is hesitant because the waiter appears to be very nice, but she insists that he has to do what his character wants. Allegra then summons the waiter, and when he arrives, Ted shoots at him. However, he misses the shot, allowing the waiter to draw a knife in retaliation. Just when it seems the duo is in trouble, Allegra throws soup at the waiter. This gives Ted enough time to finally shoot him dead. Seconds later, Nourish emerges from the kitchen and informs the two that they have passed their first test. He reveals that he is a member of the Realists, and the waiter was a traitor. It turns out that Allegra and Ted are also members of the Realists in this game. Nourish then reveals that they are using the amphibians and reptiles captured for the pod factory to create organic weapons such as the pistol. These weapons will be used in their efforts to overthrow gaming companies and their employees. Later, Ted and Allegra rush to the store looking for Nader, but he is nowhere to be found. Instead, they meet another clerk named Carlo, who leads them to the back room where Nader's corpse is lying. Carlo admits that he is also a realist, and Ted made a serious mistake by murdering the waiter. He reveals that Nourish is actually a double agent working for Cortical Systematics. Nourish and Nader were working together to destroy the Realists, and they manipulated Ted and Allegra into doing their dirty work. Carlo explains that when he learned of this, he had no choice but to kill Nader later for his treachery. This confuses Allegra and Ted, who have no idea what they are doing in the game. Regardless, they head back to the pod factory to confront Nourish and kill him if necessary. While searching for him, they come across a shed and discover an infected purple pod. Surprisingly, Allegra suddenly has a strong urge to plug into it. She asks for Ted's help, and he connects the cord to her without hesitation. Respect. This unfortunately turns out to be a bad decision. As Allegra becomes infected and experiences immense pain, she starts to panic, so Ted frantically cuts the cord, which causes her to bleed heavily. At this point, Nourish arrives with a flamethrower and attempts to destroy the infected pod. It soon explodes, unleashing lethal spores throughout the factory. The flames then spread to the surrounding area, and Allegra shoots Nourish dead in retaliation. Afterward, she and Ted finally exit the game and return to reality. However, Allegra is shocked to see that she has brought back a disease from the game. Ted and the pod become immediately infected with the spores. She is perplexed by how the disease has spread from the game to reality and begins to examine Ted's back. She then uses a disinfection device on him and discovers that Vincoeur gave him an infected port to sabotage the game. Just then, a massive explosion occurs outside, and Carlo appears with a gun. Allegra and Ted are bewildered by the presence of a game character in reality. Carlo claims that the Realists have triumphed and fires his gun at Allegra's pod. This causes her to scream in horror, as 5 years of her hard work have gone down the drain. However, Ted calms her down and assures her that this can't really be happening and that they might still be in the game. Following this, the two rush outside, where Carlo attempts to murder Allegra, but someone unexpectedly shoots him dead, and it turns out to be Vincoeur. Allegra accuses the old man of betraying him and demands to know why he double-crossed her. Vincoeur reveals that he had already copied her game while he was dismantling it earlier, so she doesn't have to worry. He admits that he now works for Cortical Systematics and asks her to join them as well. However, Allegra immediately shoots the old man dead, believing that she's still in the game. She then urges Ted to leave, but he shockingly reveals that he's a realist and his job is to kill her. Taken aback, Allegra asks why he got close to her, and he explains that he wanted to understand the person he was meant to kill. He then points a gun at her, but Allegra pulls a remote control from her pocket and activates it. It turns out that while she was applying the disinfection device to him earlier, it was actually an explosive. Allegra reveals that she knew his identity, because everyone these days has a bioport except for the Realists. Just then, the bomb goes off and kills Ted instantly. Allegra then celebrates and screams that she has won the game. In the next scene, the game finally returns to reality, but this reality is different from what we saw before. We see 12 participants in chairs, and it turns out that all the people we saw throughout the movie were just volunteers for beta testing, including Ted and Allegra. The real developer of the game is Nourish, and his latest game isn't called eXistenZ, but rather Transcendence. The participants then enthusiastically discuss the game's realism and praise Nourish's work. They laugh and express regret that they couldn't have had a bigger part or lasted longer in the game. Allegra thanks Nourish for assigning her the role of developer, while he praises her game and thanks her for bringing Ted. It is then revealed that Ted and Allegra are actually dating in real life. After the debrief of the game, Nourish privately tells his assistant that he didn't like the anti-VR angle the game took. He believes this element must have come from one of the tester's thoughts. At this moment, Allegra and Ted approach him, complimenting him on how real and profound the game felt. Nourish thanks them, but Ted suddenly inquires if he feels remorse for being one of the architects of the world's downfall through video games. They then accuse him of distorting reality, and we find out that Ted and Allegra are actually realists. Before Nourish can say anything, the couple shoots him and his assistant to death. In the final scene, the two approach the security guard who played the Chinese waiter in the game. They are about to kill him, but the desperate man calms them down and inquires whether they are still in the game. Hearing this, Ted and Allegra are shocked and unsure how to respond. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.